What is up, everybody? Back in the warehouse doing some work, or rather getting some work done. But we do need to do a video about today's topic. This one's hilarious. Hilarious because, well, economic reality is just that. Though the government, unfortunately, exists to try to mask a lot of stuff that should be failures through way of subsidizing it, welfare statism, subsidies, grants, or on the other side, discouraging people to get into business by way of taxation and various laws that are in place that seem to only exist to make it as difficult as possible for you to be able to operate a business. Now, I'd imagine in the country that we're referring to here, Canada, it's far worse out there, and it's bad in America. It has to be far worse out there. But there is a coffee shop that is out of Toronto. I'm going to pull this up here. That is going out of business. It has only been open for a little over a year, I think. And businesses open and close all the time. You know, generally speaking, you give it a shot. Some succeed, some don't. Actually, most of them don't. For a longer extended period of time. But you can especially see the irony here when you read the statement that I'm going straight off of their website. Now, I'm going to read this statement. It does kind of touch on some hilarious stuff. It says, sadly, the Anarchist, which is the name of the actual coffee shop, will be closing its doors on May 30th. So that's not too long from now. More than likely, their lease at their spot is maybe going to be up by then, and they're just gonna get it, gonna concede that they're just not making the money. And this is what they had to say. It's been an amazing experience connecting with so many great community members, sparking desperately needed debate, raising the blood pressure of conservatives. And then this part is hilarious. Parentheses says that includes you anarcho-capitalists and libertarians. So he's talking about us. Now, when you hear the term anarchist, and though I'm one as well, I know there are those that generally associate it with leftism. Definitely anarchists. A lot of people that call themselves anarchists, when often they're leftist statists anyway, they like to say that we're the ones that are more akin to some sort of form of statism. That's a topic for another discussion. We used to have those debates all up and down in the mid 2010s. Who's the real anarchist? And I don't even care to have that dispute. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. They don't see me as allies. I don't see them as allies either, because they are against private property rights. And obviously that is the core tenet of what it is that I believe in. But to just give some context as I finish reading this, it wasn't that this was just like some random coffee shop. They call it the Anarchists, and it's explicitly like they are trying to be provocative, right? It's they don't. I think they say they don't cater to certain people that I guess they do not like, which is, look, it's your private property. Do whatever it is that you want. It just came with its set of consequences, because I guess they weren't self-aware that it's coffee, dude. There's gonna be people along several different economic and political spectrums that are going to be, or they fall differently on those spectrums, let's say that, then probably you as the owner. And it makes a lot of sense. If you are trying to make money, well, you just try to present a good product, and that should be the coffee. But this was more akin to the message itself that they were trying to utilize to actually, I don't know, mix this in with a coffee shop. But really, it was just trying to use it as a vehicle for their own views, which, whatever, it didn't work. But they said, fulfilling the dream of most service workers by not having to tolerate the presence of professional class traders, pigs, and military. I guess they don't sell to military folk or cops. And experimenting with living and working in ways that don't enthusiastically embrace the pure misanthropy of capitalism. Unfortunately, the lack of generational wealth seed capital from ethically bankrupt sources left me unable to weather the quiet winter season or to grow in ways needed to be sustainable longer term. And that's the beauty of capitalism in itself. Economic law is economic law. You can try to get the government to mask, but it can only do it for so long. And often, when they are involved in the economy, it works worse, far worse than it was if the market was completely freed. But this is the reality that people have to look when you are selling a product. First of all, let me define capitalism. This guy's a leftist. I don't know if he's a Marxist, but he probably defines it more akin to, I guess, etymological terms and like how Marx maybe defined it. So he wouldn't define it like I define it. So we're just arguing like semantics here. But I define capitalism, and everybody that advocates it for the most part, be it Austrian or Chicago economists, that's the private ownership of goods and services and the free and voluntary exchange of those private goods and services. Okay. They are, of course, against that because they look at private property as something that is obviously a negative thing, because they look at it like inherently coercive and all of that, because they think just by sheer existing, they are entitled to certain things that are required of them to live. But the beauty about economic law in this case is that you have to be providing yourself useful to the geographical area that you're operating in, and your fellow man. Okay, unless you are using actual coercive forms, theft, legitimate theft, like acts of aggression, those types of things, violence, whatever it is, to then accumulate the money. If you don't do that, the only other way that you have to be successful in business is to provide some sort of use to other individuals. Okay. So it's funny. A lot of people look at capitalism like this negative thing, and it's this the greedy capitalists and all that. When it's like the complete opposite, right? You have to provide a service, a good that other people want. So you have to serve your fellow man in order to be successful. If the market is obviously at least relatively freer, let's say that. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, government does try to get involved in that, picking winners and losers, and we of course don't want that. So it didn't work for them. They weren't bringing in enough money. I always talk about generational wealth. It all boils down to you were not making money in terms of what you were expensing. You just weren't making money. Nobody had much interest in your little product or your coffee shop, and you suffered economically because of it. It happens to businesses all the time. Ends by saying, I'd like to say huge thanks to Pop Coffee Works, my coffee supplier and landlords, for the generosity and patience. I'm guessing you were probably behind on the rent. They could have easily sold this space or rented it out for more than twice what they charged me for it. So it was a charity. So you were pretty much operating in the red either way. So this place wouldn't have existed without them. They roast the best coffee, blah, blah, blah. And basically thanking people for the success. The Anarchist has been huge success in every way I hoped. Well, is it? Because you did say, unfortunately, that you had to close down. So it doesn't seem like everything it is that you hoped. But, he ends with saying this. He says, fuck the rich, fuck the police, fuck the state. I'd agree with some of those statements, except the fuck the rich part, for sure. And I know people might not like me for saying that or disagree with me for saying that. Those are my positions, and I've expanded on those positions and why I feel that way for a very long time, a better part of over a decade, a minimum, at least in the public sphere. You can go watch my old videos where I used to really talk about all this philosophical stuff. It bores me to death now to do all of that stuff, because it's like, my job here is to be more involved in culture. But it's a difference between, I'm gonna go to myself. This is what separates people like myself from the people that claim to be anarchists, and even some libertarians claim to be libertarians. That is, and what difference folks like myself from them. See, I've made this point many, many times. Being against the current state is not good enough, right? Because you just saw, as he signs off, he says some things that I would agree with, but that's not enough, right? Because it's one thing to be against something for the reason that I am, which is why the reason you're against it is just as important as the reason that you're against it, okay? So for me, it's like, I look at it like, well, you look at the state as a territorial monopoly on use of force, violence, and ultimate decision making. It inherently it exists as an act of aggression, right? And it obviously it acts And there's nothing that it does. It doesn't get wealth by way of like legitimate voluntary means. No, everything that it either has stolen directly from you or it has sold off assets of the unborn, which is what we got with the central banking system. Okay. So I'm against the state for that reason, is that I look at it for what it is. It's the biggest aggressor, actual aggressor that it is. That exists. You look at the mountains of bodies that, governments democide, have killed over them. I mean, nobody's orchestrated any sort of level of mass murder to the degree of what the states have over the course of even recent, more modern history. Okay. But that's why I'm against it. For a lot of leftists, they look at it like it gets in the way of their ultimate plans. And they would very well want to control, going back to Marxism and what they deemed as what was going to be the dictatorship of the proletariat. Right? If at some point they understand that they need to get control to build up their little sort of utopian line of thinking. So they have no issues when the state is being utilized definitely to suppress and oppress and aggress on their ideological enemies, or to do, in a lot of cases, welfare statism, which you see these mass forms of transfer of wealth. And this is why they have no problem being for that. And often a lot of these guys, like what did I say, the self-ownership song, and I said it's like edgy teenager. That's what I'm talking about with the fake kind of. You get a lot of musicians that are like that sort of, fight the powers that be, fist in the air. And you saw what happened during 2016 with Bernie Sanders running. They shield for the state. 2020, same thing. And then you go into certainly, especially what happened with the COVID situation, you see these same types are advocating for the state to basically be their mothers. Okay. So they're not actually against the state by any means. That's all a quack. But it's hilarious watching these guys fail utterly economically, and having to be faced with the economic reality. And still, it's not like they're going to take any sort of, and this is why they hate business, why they hate freer markets, because it would force them to be useful, and they're not useful people. And they know that for the most part. They can't really be useful doing what it is that they, let's say, like and ideally like to do. They just think that they inherit that just by way of existing. They should be able to have some comfortable form of living without having to provide some sort of good or service to their fellow man to get money, let's say, to then pay off whatever necessary expenses. They just think, well, I live, I'm alive, and therefore you should be stolen from to pay for whatever bad decisions. It's irresponsible. You look at their business model, it's very irresponsible, but it's not like he accepted, Gabriel, I believe is his name, you're looking at it now. It's not like he accepted any sort of blame, let's say that. He didn't at all. He says that he blames other people. He said the lack of generational wealth seed capital from ethically bankrupt, it's someone else's fault. And that's what leftists have historically done, and that's what they have historically been.
If you enjoyed this video and want to support other content, please become a member at ericdjuly.com. This is my own unique platform that replaced my Patreon. Our Ultramax, which is our highest tier, gets free shipping domestically, even with Rippaverse orders, and are able to redeem the Creators Edition copy of ISOM #1. You can move up and down tiers or cancel at any time. Also visit Rippaverse.com. This is my comic book company that launched a $3.7 million campaign. We appreciate your support.